everybody, it's Trags, and it's Wednesday, October 10th, time for episode 266 of Patriots Beat on the CLNS Media Network. Find us at clnsmedia.com and follow us, of course, on Twitter at PatriotsCLNS. There have been two games circled on the first half schedule for the Patriots. The first big test, of course, was in Jacksonville week 2, and that did not go very well. A loss to the Jaguars in the AFC Championship rematch down in northern Florida. I'm not counting the game with Matt Patricia and the Lions because the second big test comes this Sunday night at home against Pat Mahomes and the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs at Gillette. And to discuss this week's huge showdown is an old friend from our Celtics days together, Lynn Worthy of the Kansas City Star and KansasCity.com. How you doing, Lynn?
I'm doing great. Glad to be with you.
It's great to have you on board here on Patriots Beat. Who did you cover the Celtics for specifically in your time back in the late 2000s?
Yeah, it was the Lowell Sun. So I was there for, I want to say, part of 5 seasons, maybe, or no, maybe it was more like 4. The first season I really did, I was around regularly, was the season when they only won 24 games. And then, of course, that off season they put together the new Big Three with the Ray Allen trade and Kevin Garnett trade, and won the championship the next year. So, and then I was there through the second championship run, second finals run where they came up short of the championship.
So your first year was Rondo's rookie year.
Yeah. I think one of the first events I covered might have been draft night because, and it's sort of funny because, I mean, now you look at it as probably the Rondo draft, but, at the time, that night, the big story was that they had traded for Sebastian Telfair.
Right.
And Rondo was sort of the afterthought because it was, I guess technically it was one of those trades that you couldn't, announce ahead of time. So technically Phoenix made the pick for them, I believe, is how it ended up playing out. But yeah, it was, they made that pick for Rondo, and but then everybody was talking about Telfair because they made that trade that night.
How much do you miss Boston?
I mean, it's different. I've tried to tell people since I left, I worked in upstate New York and Binghamton. I spent a little bit of time in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Salt Lake City, Utah, and now I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, and this is my first season covering the Chiefs. But I've told people in different places, it's not the same. Like, I try to explain it, but you gotta be somebody who grew up around it and worked around it to really get Boston and just sort of the sense with the sports and the intensity and how much people really get into it. And then, of course, I mean, I was there for, some Patriots titles and some obviously got to see firsthand the Celtics titles, but, then they had that stretch where, everybody won a title. So it was, I think I was in town for, I think the only one that I wasn't in town for the Bruins, but I mean, I saw Red Sox, I saw I saw Celtics, and I saw Patriots all win titles in that stretch there. And I mean, there's cities that don't have anything like that. So, in Boston, it's just different.
What did covering the Celtics in 2008 and 2010 on their runs to the finals teach you about the business and covering such a high-profile team, so early in your career?
I think just that, how many things can become, big stories for the moment. I mean, and
right.
Then all of a sudden they're forgotten. I mean, like we just mentioned the Telfair thing, but I think it was in preseason that year where he also had I think Telfair again had gotten robbed in New York, where where he's from, and that was the big thing that everybody was talking about at the time. And it was during the preseason, and by the time the season started, I don't know if anybody even remembered that. And the other thing that I think I remembered was when I learned, not remembered, was that when everybody's sort of on that's a good time to try and, as they say, bob when everybody else is weaving. Because I think I grabbed Danny at that time to talk to him a little bit about Rondo for a story, just because everybody was trying to talk to him about Telfair. So he was happy to talk about something else. But then also just how, when you have a group like that together, everything becomes, just big, and national people come in, and it's just sort of, you try to find you have to come up with different ways to get at things because everybody's always clamoring for the same stuff. So I've tried to keep that with me wherever I've gone, particularly now with the Chiefs, because now everybody seems to be, whether it's the national writers or TV or NFL Network are coming out here doing stuff with Mahomes or different aspects of the team. So you got to sort of have that, be sort of agile and change gears and come at things a different way. So that, and then just how intense some fan bases can be about things, because Twitter was around then, but I don't know if people were as into it or it was as active as it is now. So there's all sorts of interaction that not just players get, but you as a writer or reporter get with fans about stuff that's going on. So all that I think goes back to my time there, because that was my first newspaper job it was the Lowell Sun, which was my hometown paper too. So it was definitely, there's not too many times I don't think about just how things got started. And I actually called and talked to one of the guys back there this week just because I know I was coming back this weekend.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I've got to ask you, I think you have a fascinating background because you played football at Bates, correct?
Yeah, the first 2 years I was there, I played football, and then decided it was time to get on with things.
Well, what position?
Realized that.
Yeah, what position?
I played in college. I played fullback. So in high school, fullback and linebacker. But in college, it was fullback, and then like I said, just played the first couple years. But yeah, I was a fullback. Still keep that with me.
Not to cut you off, but it's Division III, but it's still college football, and it is something that I assume gives you incredible perspective now when you're covering a professional football team, in the NFL, and that's got to be one of the big differences for you, right, between covering the NBA versus covering the NFL. No,
I'd say, I'd like to think it does. It's one of those things that I don't necessarily, tout, because it just seems sort of foolish to me to be sort of like puffing out your chest and say, "Oh, well, I played."
I understand that.
I think
but you know what I'm saying. You have an appreciation.
But yeah, I know what you're saying.
Played it.
I know what you're saying. I'm just trying to explain because I know people, because a lot of times I'll just sort of like mention it. Even when the guys here, I think one of the first things I did here, we do a lot of Facebook stuff with the newspaper, and I sort of glossed over. He was like, "Yeah, I played a couple years, but whatever." And one of the guys was like, "Well, no, you play." I said, "Yeah." It's I think it. I remember when I was in school, and one of the coaches we had, I think, used to talk about how we approach everything the same way as they would do it at University of Nebraska or whatever. Pick your Power 5 school. It's the same thing. Obviously, we were not the same caliber players, but the way you approach it is the same. And I've sort of learned as I've covered, whether it's been pro practices, college, major college football, because I was covering Utah when I was out in Salt Lake City, and that's Power 5 and the Pac-12. And, when you watch the times that you get to watch a full practice, or like even training camp this year, you're watching a full practice. There's, obviously they're a high level, and, these coaches have had a lot more experience or, been around a lot longer, that sort of thing. But, football is still football. So, there's only so many ways you can do these drills. It's a lot of it is the same thing. So, yeah, I think perspective-wise, there's things I look at and I still remember doing a lot of the same things and, or haven't seen it at different levels. And, it's still the same sorts of things that they're, same sorts of fundamentals, same sorts of things that they're sort of teaching. I don't think there was as much spread offense in my day when I was playing, but I've seen a lot of that at the high school and college level as well too. So yeah, I think it helps in terms of just sort of the way. A lot of different coaches have different terminology and things like that. So I wouldn't even say terminology, but I just think in terms of the way they sort of look at things. And it definitely helps now because they got me doing stuff sort of like film breakdowns and snap counts and all those sorts of things I do for our website. So it helps with that.
Speaking with Lynn Worthy of the Kansas City Star and KansasCity.com, covering the Kansas City Chiefs. I want to tell you about a betting service that you will love. BetDSI.com has been paying winners for 20 years. Use your sports knowledge to make some extra cash. Go online or to their easy-to-use mobile app. They have the fastest payouts in the industry. Play, win, get paid. BetDSI offers betting options for everything. Bet on football or other major sports, politics, reality TV, esports, virtually everything. Try live betting at BetDSI, where you can bet on every play, every drive, and every score until that final whistle blows. Use the promo code Patriots18, and first-time deposits get a 100% bonus match on your money up to $500. Once again, use the promo code Patriots18, and first-time deposits get a 100% bonus match on your money up to $500. It's only a game until you bet it at BetDSI. Back with Lynn Worthy, Kansas City Chiefs beat reporter for the Kansas City Star and KansasCity.com. All right, let's get to the meat of the matter. Pat Mahomes. In July, when you were brought on board at the Kansas City Star, you said, "I'm anxious to start chronicling and analyzing the franchise's continued march into the Brett Veach era in the front office, as well as the development of the only quarterback drafted by the Chiefs in the first round in more than 30 years." Wow, what a quarterback, Pat Mahomes. Where do you begin describing his skills?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that sort of jumped out at me, or the thing that struck me so far, is just how quickly he seems to have just sort of dove in and taken over. I mean, I expected it to be sort of he'll get better as the season goes along, and he'll have his mistakes and growing pains. And then so he comes out and throws 10 touchdowns in the first 2 weeks and 13 in the first 3, and it's like, what the heck? I mean, I remember one time being in the office, and some people on staff with the newspaper on the news side who are big Chiefs fans, and I mentioned something about by the end of the season, Pat should be doing this and that, and they were like, by the end of the season, and they were sort of like disappointed. I said, well, the guy's played one game. I said, you can't expect that much from him. And then he proceeded to prove me exactly wrong as soon as the season started. And I mean, through training camp even, we saw, he had days in camp where he would throw interceptions, and it'd be written about and it'd be talked about, and to the point that I think Andy Reid even sort of had to come out and made a comment about how they were fine with him doing that, and they sort of wanted him to, I think the term he used was test the offense, and that you can't just check down all the time and become a good quarterback like that. You got to test things, and he used the term intestinal fortitude to go out and to make these throws and try different things. And during one of I think it was one of the Facebook things, I made the offhand comment I said, yeah, well, he said intestinal fortitude, and intestinal fortitude starts with INT. And so, then it took 5 weeks. It took 5 weeks for him to actually throw one in a game against, probably the best defense in the NFL. So, he's I would say better than advertised, but there were a lot of people who had high hopes for him. I didn't see it. I didn't expect it to happen this quickly.
You got 14 touchdowns and 2 picks, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and both of those came just this past week.
And a 5-0 start.
Yeah, he went through the first 4 games without throwing a pick, and he actually didn't throw a touchdown this past week, so he had 14 touchdowns before he threw his first interception.
So, in talking with Bill Belichick this week, he could not stop raving about the arm strength of Pat Mahomes, and that he can make any throw on the field, and he can he could throw it out of the stadium. I mean, there's not a spot on the field Pat Mahomes really can't reach beyond his 30-yard line, and that is a danger for the Patriots to defend. And then we were talking with Josh Boyer, and I asked Josh about and he is the defensive backs coach, and I asked him, what's the biggest danger with Pat Mahomes? And he said, without question, his ability to extend the play and make sure that, and our guys have to make sure that we stay in coverage the whole way, because the more he extends a play, the more danger you have in guys breaking off routes, running free, and you lose them. And Mahomes keeps his eyes down the field very, very well for 22 years old, right? Second-year quarterback is 22?
23. He turned 23 a few weeks back. Yep.
So would you agree with that assessment of Josh Boyer, that his ability to extend a play and throw the ball accurately on the run is one of the things he really brings to the table?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, he had, that one play that went viral against, I think it was the 49ers, yeah, here in Kansas City, the touchdown where he turned one way and came back the other way and then rolled back right and then was able to find Chris Conley in the back of the end zone and I think, on the run, right on the money for a touchdown. And I think that one was one of the highlights. It seemed like he's got a bunch of highlights, but that was one of the highlights that was all over the place that week. Against Denver, I think really Denver was the week where, because of the pressure they were putting on and the way they were coming after him, buying time was the only thing that sort of made the offense go because they were down 10 in the fourth quarter, and his ability to buy time to get throws off or to, just to get receivers open. I mean, that's the famous left-handed throw was one
Yep.
where, he saw exactly what was coming, and he knew that the only way to get that pass off, and it was a third down, so he had to convert, and they were down at the time. He had to start moving, and as he did, he realized, on the run that he didn't have enough time to actually bring the ball up and throw it, or he was going to risk it getting stripped from him or getting battered or something like that. So he switched hands and just tossed. So as he shot putted it out there with the left hand to Tyreek Hill, who got the first down and kept that drive going and helped them go down and score and eventually win the game. But his ability to make things happen in the pocket. I mean, and there's the times when he rolls out, but then there's the other times where he just does things, almost little subtle things in the pocket. Not every time. It's not as though he's perfect. I mean, he's still young, but he does little things like one of the plays from this past week against the Jaguars. He threw I'm trying to think, it was 30 or 40 yards. Just flicked it out there to Travis Kelce along the sideline. And when you look at it in the pocket, there's somebody who, if he takes the time and actually steps into it, because he never actually stepped into it, but if he did, there was a defender who was across his face right after he let the ball go. So if he steps into it, is that, disrupt the throw? Does it get batted? Little things like that. Or his first touchdown of the season against the Chargers was a run-pass option where he had a defender bearing right down on him, and he's thrown into a window between two linebackers, and he sticks it right in there, sort of throws it almost three-quarters as opposed to over the top, hits Tyreek Hill, who catches it and takes off for, I think it was 56 or 59-yard touchdown. So, yeah, he does.
That's what Andy Reid's talking about testing the offense and showing intestinal fortitude is throwing between two linebackers, right?
Stuff like that, and just being willing not to be reckless, but to sort of take chances. I mean, in the Pittsburgh game, there was one of the plays that I think I broke down for the film thing that we do online was is Travis Kelce, and now he's open, but the window is not big. I mean, he's open. I mean, it's not big, but for him, it might as well have been because you had a linebacker whose head was turned, running to try and catch up with Kelce. You had another one who was, in theory, was in the right position, but sort of his hips were turned to the outside, which meant the time that he would have had to turn and react to the ball with Mahomes throwing it the way he does, he didn't have enough time. So Mahomes just let it go and ripped it in there and ends up being a touchdown. And that's the other thing that they have is just, because of the weapons they have that they put on the field at the same time, you occupy safeties with guys like Hill and Sammy Watkins or you have to try and make decisions on how you're going to cover Kelce, and do you devote extra people to him and leave other guys one-on-one, and Pat finds that, he finds that matchup, he finds what you're trying to do and where you're vulnerable, and he goes right after you.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this question. Can Pat Mahomes cover for the defense all season?
All season?
Probably not, right?
I don't think he can do it not all season, but if the defense, and it's a big but, if the defense is able to do what they did on Sunday,
5 turnovers.
and I had this conversation with Booger McFarland from Monday Night Football leading into the game in Denver, because the defense has been talked about all season. That that's going to be their weak link, that's going to be their undoing.
Sure.
And because they've been giving up, I think they gave up 1,000 yards in the first 3 games, something like that. And so it was. It was the thing that everybody pointed to, and Booger was like, "Yeah, I don't really care about the yards," because he was down on the defense too. He said, "I don't care about the yards," he said, "but what they've got to do is they've got to create turnovers and they got to be strong in the red zone." And this week is actually the first time when it seems like they really did that. I think they kept Jacksonville to 1 of 5 in the red zone, and then created 5 turnovers. So if they do that, then maybe Patrick and that offense can make up for it. But that's a tall task to ask for every week, and we have only seen it really that one game because they had struggled. I think through the first 4 games there was only I want to say 2 turnovers that they had. There was 1 on special teams. I think there was 1 interception in the first game of the season and 1 interception in Denver. And that had been the extent of the turnovers caused by the defense for the first 4 games. But, and I sort of, anecdotally, I sort of was thinking about some of those old Patriots teams where, there was a question about, is the offense obviously is putting up numbers, but did they have enough to get over the hump? And it seemed like, at least to my memory, and maybe you can push back on this, but there were some of those teams, not the early ones.
Well, 2009 and 2010, definitely. Brady was having great years, but
exactly.
The defense was really weak. And you know what, Lynn? People would say that if the 2011 team had a stronger defense, they win Super Bowl 46, beat the Giants, and that's where I think a lot of people, those 3 years, 2009, 2010, when they were 14-2 and went out in the first round to the Jets, and then 2011 when they lost the Super Bowl to the Giants. Those defenses weren't great, but Brady was. And that's where I think, you started to see guys like Dante Hightower and Devin McCourty start to come into the fold and start to really become influential leaders in the room and obviously on the field. And that's where I think the perspective changed a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know if the Chiefs have that in them. I mean, it's they've had a lot of change on defense this past year too. Like that was the main thing. The thrust of the offseason was to revamp that defense because they just had too many issues with it last year. They didn't think it was good enough against the run. They had to get younger, and so that's this was the first full off season for the general manager Brett Veach, and they spent they had 6 draft picks. They spent 5 of them on defensive players, but the one offensive player was a defensive player that they're converting to offensive line. So really they drafted 6 defensive guys with their picks in the offseason. They signed Anthony Hitchens. They made the deal to bring in Kendall Fuller. So, I mean, defense was the focus. It's just, they haven't quite found that the formula yet. And Eric Berry, the all-pro safety, still hasn't played yet. So it's still a work in progress. I just don't know if they'll be able to put it together enough to sort of come through when they have to, or at least in the playoffs against the teams that you figure they'll probably end up running into, like the Patriots and things like that.
Speaking with Lynn Worthy, Chiefs reporter and columnist for the Kansas City Star and KansasCity.com. Hey, Boston sports fans, do you want to get killer seats to see your favorite team for the price of a beer or a large pizza? Tired of paying for all of the inflated markups from brokers or last-minute convenience charges, so you end up actually paying courtside prices for nosebleed seats? Well, there's an answer. Go to 1in100.co. That's 1in100.co. Feeling lucky? Try it now. The novelty of 1in100 is that there is no other place online that's doing online raffles to win tickets to events. The cost to potentially score tickets with 1in100 is a small fraction of the actual ticket price. Score a pair of tickets for less than the cost of a beer. Your first raffle ticket is free after signing up. The experience of using 1in100, which is extremely fun and exciting, from picking your lucky number to the feeling of potentially scoring premium tickets. Feeling lucky? Try it now. Go to 1in100.co. That's 1in100.co. Back with Lynn Worthy of the Kansas City Star and KansasCity.com, covering the Chiefs, of course, and the NFL. What's it been like talking to Andy Reid? One of my favorite Andy Reid traditions after a game is "Time is yours." Does he still say that at the?
Oh, he does.
Yeah, that's my
he
favorite
does.
Andy Reid-ism, if you will, after every game. He goes over the
Yeah, I mean,
injuries.
it's not even just after the game either. It's pretty much just about every time he's at the podium speaking to media. Yeah, I mean, so we had availability on Monday, and he gave the injury update, and then I'm pretty sure he maybe gave a little opening remarks about the game they just had. But then once he gets through that, it's time is yours, to the point where, like I say, he says it every time. And so when we do our Facebook Live for the paper, every now and then at the end of it, I'll just throw it in there. Like when we're all signing off, I'll just throw in a time is yours to the people watching at home.
Not only that, he has one of the driest but wittiest senses of humor in any head coach in the NFL. That's the thing I don't think people listening to this may fully appreciate. Certainly if, you don't live in Kansas City or Philadelphia for that matter, all those years with the Eagles. You don't appreciate his wit. But tell us.
Yeah, he's pretty quick too. On the fly, thinking on his feet. I mean, so there was one, and I think, I've pretty much come clean on this, but so we do the conference call on the weeks that, if they're at home, usually Monday availability is in person. If they're on the road, usually it's on the phone on Monday.
Right.
People are sort of making their way back. And so I forget which week it was, but we had the conference call, and I typically will put my phone on speaker and then have my tape recorder going so that I can,
sure,
keep it all, And so then, but I didn't mute my phone, so I got an alert or something went off, and so my phone started vibrating, and so you could hear it over the conference call, and and I just sort of plays off like it didn't happen, and the next thing you hear is Andy Reid in the middle of a sentence stop and go, "Is somebody duck hunting? What is that?" And so, because of the vibrating, and that one's been a running joke all season now about the duck hunting, because my phone vibrated in the middle of the conference call, and he just went right back into whatever it was. He said, "What is that, duck hunting?"
How good is his?
And there was somebody.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, and there was one time when somebody asked him about, Sean McVay and his recall on plays, and so of course somebody asked him about, can you do that sort of thing? And I think it was one of those questions that's probably one of the few longer than it needed to. And so when the person finally stopped, he just looked at him and said, "What'd you say again?" It is in obviously playing off the whole memory thing. So he has his little barbs here and there, and he's pretty quick on his feet. But yeah, he's one who slides some jokes in there, and he's got a little more sense of humor than some of the probably the dry things that you might see of him, or that you expect from your NFL coaches.
How good is his Pat Mahomes impersonation? What's the story behind that?
He won't do it in front of us. One of our columnists actually asked him, because it was I think Pat made mention of it, that he does it, and it's pretty clear that he does it, but he wasn't going to do it in front of us. So he said something along the lines of, maybe later on in the season.
Froggish is what he called it, Pat Mahomes, right? Froggish?
Yeah, that was his term, was froggish. I mean, we were talking about it back in camp about what's the best way to describe it, and I don't think we ever really came to a consensus. But then once it started to get to be a national topic, that's when I think one of our columnists wrote about it, and obviously Andy got asked about it. Some of the players got asked about it. So, yeah.
That's always the way, Lynn. The reason I want to bring up Andy Reid, obviously, it's a tremendous story, his career track as a head coach with the Eagles and now the Chiefs, and he's been so close so many times. And, he gets criticized for the time management. Do you ever think those criticisms of time management get to him, or is he like, look, I've heard that a million times, it doesn't bother me. People are going to think about that however they're going to think about it?
I don't think it bothers him. I mean, I think he's, and I don't think it's not something that has necessarily come up, this year, has been asked about. But I mean, he strikes me as the person that if you brought it up, he'd address it and then sort of keep moving. I mean, it wasn't. I don't think it's one of those things that he's all of a sudden going to, blow off the handle or anything like that. If he started asking about it, or if it came up again, I think he's heard it. He's probably, address it and then just keep on rolling. The funny thing is so they're different personalities, but he was a college teammate of Kyle Whittingham, the University of Utah coach, who I covered before I came here.
Right.
And dealing with the two of them, I said, they're similar in the way they approach things. Andy's probably a little more, in some ways, a little more quick-witted, or maybe a little more. He's got a little more sense of humor that he shows. Not that Whit doesn't, but Whit probably just doesn't show it as much. But when it comes to certain things, they don't necessarily like to give out a whole lot of information on injuries or strategy and that sort of stuff. But they're never really, at least from what I've seen, never really spiteful or rude about the way they go about sort of shutting you down. And I think they both sort of think of themselves as teachers in a way when it comes to talking about how you approach things and sort of getting better at the game and that sort of stuff. So and Whit, there's been times when when faced with something that maybe he could have done better in the game, Whit would always just take it head on, address it, and then move on. And I think Andy's got that same type of approach when it comes to that sort of stuff.
Well, and on a serious note, Andy Reid is somebody who's been obviously through tragedy. Lost his son Garrett in 2012 in training camp with the Eagles at Lehigh University. And I don't know if you know Andy long enough. Has he ever made reference to that, or have you ever heard anybody say that still sticks with him to this day? That he, I'm sure he has the memory of his son in his mind every single day. What father wouldn't? But do you ever get the sense that that incredible loss provided perspective in his football career as a head coach?
I'm not sure if that specifically has, but I think there's one thing that you notice when you've been around him is how sort of loyal he is to people that have sort of been close to him. And I don't know if that was something that was there before, but it's definitely something that you notice spending more time around, whether it's the general manager for the Chiefs now, Brett Veach, is a guy who was with Andy back when they were in Philadelphia, and he was sort of like the special assistant, basically, just the whatever you need guy is where Veach and him first started to work together, and he's obviously come to Kansas City, and now he's the general manager. There's coaches that are like that. There's actually one of our columnists wrote about he's got his assistant now. I forget the exact title. Is a guy who actually only has one arm. He had a childhood accident, and Andy, Andy's once he got to know him and brought him on staff, he even made the joke, I think, that's his left-hand man because he doesn't have the right arm. And so, but, and then even, again, going back to Whit, Whit's son is now one of the administrative assistants, Whittingham's son, one of the administrative assistants on the Chiefs this year, who working on the defensive side. And I think when I first came in during camp and, got introduced to Andy, and Andy mentioned Utah, and he said, "Oh yeah," he said, he said, "Doesn't he look just like Kyle?" Talking about Whittingham's son, who's on staff now, and so I think there's a lot of people that he crossed paths with over the years, and he stays in touch, stays loyal to them. He'll refer back to or at least he not necessarily refers back to, but he definitely keeps an eye on people he's been in touch with over the years, and I think families too. One of the guys back in Utah that I worked with at the Tribune, his father had coached Andy when they were at BYU, and he still, recognizes, that family. And so I think, I don't know, like I said, I haven't known him long enough to know if he's always been that way, but I think, whether it's family or people who've been close to him, people he's worked with, I think he keeps a lot of that stuff in mind, and that, keeps a lot of those people close to him. And once they get close to him, it seems like they stay close to him. So I don't know if the things that have gone on with his family and his son, losing the son, has changed him at all. But I know that just when you get to spend time around them, you see that a lot of those people and all those different things going on are, you see that he keeps a lot of that stuff close to him, and those people are important to him.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I can tell you, having spoken to Bill Belichick on Tuesday during the conference call, the amount of respect Bill Belichick has for Andy Reid is unmatched in terms of opposing coaches. He he can't speak highly enough for Andy Reid and the coaching tree he comes from, obviously in the West Coast offense and Bill Walsh and all of that, and Mike Holmgren and whatnot, and with the Packers. But the respect that Bill Belichick has for Andy Reid is pretty remarkable, and he mentioned several times in Tuesday's call how Andy is always working the most out of the talent that he has, and he brought up Pat Mahomes and the other weapons, and how Andy has worked the RPO, because I asked him specifically how the RPO works into the West Coast offense, and he said, well, that's something that we've really talked about the last several days, is Andy Reid's going to find some way, something different we haven't seen on film perhaps, to try and catch us defensively off guard. Do you think that is what Andy is trying to do in this chess match Sunday night?
Yeah, he definitely has different things, different wrinkles that you'll see out there every week. The RPO, I believe, is more something that I think it fits Pat. Something that Pat's been doing, I think even going back to high school, and so that was one of those things they sort of integrated a little bit more because Mahomes is, really excels with it and is comfortable with it. And that's, talking to Belichick at a conference call with, visiting media from the Kansas City media earlier on Tuesday. Tuesday. And so, he mentioned, again, the respect for Andy and how consistently he's been and how he's done things with different groups of players and everything like that, but and how creative he's been with the offenses. And then when I asked specifically about what he thought was different, or if there was much different with the offense from past years with Alex Smith and now with Pat Mahomes, and he mentioned the RPO was definitely more prevalent, without a doubt. And so, but Andy, the first game of the season, they brought the sort of the jet sweep shovel pass into the forefront. I think they scored 2 touchdowns on jet sweep, with the motion coming across and using shovel passes in misdirection. That, I still don't think the Chargers know where the ball went on a couple of those. They went for touchdowns, one to Tyreek Hill, one to DeAnthony Thomas. And then they'll move guys around. And it seems like there's always variations off of it. He's not one of those ones where he comes up with some formation and then they're only going to run one thing out of it. They'll run something out of it, and then they'll have the counter coming out of it. So when if you think there's only one thing they're going to run out of it, then they'll get you on that, and then they'll start playing off of it. So one of the big pass plays this past week, I think to Travis Kelce, it had an element of that shovel pass, jet sweep shovel pass in that play where Tyreek Hill was in motion coming in front. They snapped the ball, and it looks like, potentially a shovel pass type of situation. Instead, they just drop back and, go at the defense a different way. But so he's always sort of building off of things, he's one of those ones where he puts something on tape, not just for the sake of putting it on tape. He's putting it on tape to set up things down the line and different variations. And you'll see Tyreek Hill playing running back, and one time he might give it to him on a handoff, and then the next time they're giving it to him out of the backfield, in space, because you think it's a running formation or you think they're going to do one thing, and he catches you with a bad matchup. So he does. Like I say, I think he puts stuff on tape and then has variations already lined up for how you decide to defend it.
You got a prediction for this Sunday night?
I'm trying to remember what I did. We had to predict the games before the season started. And I'm not really big on predictions. I don't even remember what I put down there. I think I probably at the time put them down for a loss. I know I put them down to lose the first game of the season, and once that went wrong, I think I just said they're going to win the rest of the way because, might as well, because I didn't know what I was talking about. So I do think, I expect, I don't know if it's because of all that time in New England, but I still feel like, Belichick's that one person that will come up with something, who might be able to throw something at a quarterback they haven't seen, or just sort of get them out of sorts. But off of what I've seen so far, I also don't know if I can bet against Mahomes. So I'm looking forward to the game, but I think just the personnel the Chiefs have makes it difficult. So I guess I'll give it to the Chiefs, and I've been way off on scores. So let me give them 30 this week. So we'll go 30-24, I guess.
Yeah, that's I could see that happening. It's interesting to me, Lynn, that the Chiefs started 5-0 last year after beating the Patriots on opening night, and they lost their first game at home to Pittsburgh, then lost again in Oakland, but still recovered in time to make the playoffs before losing to Tennessee. I think this Chiefs team, though, has a much higher ceiling. Just Patrick Mahomes alone, I think, makes this team a very, very dynamic team. So it'll be fascinating to watch. I want to thank you, Lynn, for joining us on the Patriots Beat podcast, and we definitely have to get together Sunday night in the press box. Deal?
Sure. I'll be there.
I'll look forward to it. Want to thank everyone for downloading today's podcast. Want to thank our terrific guest, Lynn Worthy, covering the Chiefs for the Kansas City Star and kansascity.com. Also, of course, want to thank our terrific sponsors, BetDSI and 1 in 100 for producer Michael Angie, our executive producer Larry H. Russell, and the founder of the network, Nick Gelso. This is Mike Petralia, and this has been the Patriots Beat podcast on the CLNS Media Network.